So it's great to be here with Carl Robinson, manager of Western Sydney Wanderers. Hi there, Carl.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, good. What time's it there over in Sydney just now?
It is 8 p.m. on Tuesday evening.
Oh, and a little bit sunnier than I'm sure Inverness is anyway.
It is just a little bit though, 26 degrees.
Oh, great. So thanks very much for taking the time to come on the podcast, Carl. I've been looking, I was saying to you earlier, I've seen your press conferences with the directors there at Western Sydney. I was really kind of impressed what they were saying and your appeal and the team's appeal, to them from the work you did at Newcastle. That all happened pretty quickly, was it? You must have made a big impact in Australia already, have you?
Well, yes, possibly.
Yeah.
Literally, the story of my week was on Monday morning. I was planning pre-season training in the coach's room at Newcastle. I had a phone call later in the evening about would I, like to go down and speak to Western Sydney Wanderers because they had made a change in the managerial ranks, and obviously the CEO told me, and I said I would like to have a conversation as you do in football, and I did. I went down the next day to see the facilities and meet them, just in general chat, and I was blown away. I was blown away with the infrastructure, the club, the plans, their ideas of what they want to do and where they want to get back to. But what they needed was someone to guide them because they missed the playoffs in 3 previous years. And I think their ideas and what their vision for the football club was matched up with mine. And when I went back to Newcastle, I said that there was an opportunity for me to go to the Western Sydney Wanderers, and obviously based upon circumstances as well at Newcastle, which have been difficult, been challenging for everyone involved. It was the right decision for me.
What's your thoughts on how the game's developing in Australia? Because from someone outside, it looks as if it's really developing well and pretty innovative as well moving forward.
Yes, it is. It gets compared a lot, and it's one of the hardest questions in football to answer. People have opinions about players and teams, and that's great. But when you're comparing leagues, it's very, very hard. I've been fortunate enough to work in Major League Soccer for many years, and now the A-League, as well as playing in England. And the comparisons are very hard. What I will say is there's 3 or 4 players, I think, in most teams that would be able to cope playing in the Championship quite easily in England. Or 6 or 7 players playing in Major League Soccer quite easily. So that's a fairly fair comparison. We're in a salary cap league here in Australia, like Major League Soccer, and that restricts the amount of money you can spend on players. So European imports, exports, don't get the money they probably can get in Major League Soccer and don't get the money they can get in the UK. So it's very hard. You're competing at a certain level in a certain market. What this opportunity has done with the unforeseen circumstances with COVID has allowed teams to invest more on the youth development of Australian players, which I think is paramount, not just for clubs, not just for the Australian players, but also for the national teams, because with the World Cup coming up very, very soon, it's important that these young players get the chance to play.
Yeah, and I always think of Australia as a real kind of athletic, anyway, kind of culture there. Is football competing with other sports more than it would say in the UK? And would you say that's true?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think in the UK, everyone talks about football. You have your rugby and your cricket and your darts and all of those sports, which people jump on the bandwagon with. I think in North America, you have your ice hockey, your NBA, your NFL, and then you have soccer. And in Australia, you have the AHL. You have the rugby, the AFL, and you have obviously cricket's massive here as well, and you have soccer. It's probably not the first sport, the major sport, and that's the difference you find over here. But regarding the way of life, family situation and things like that, there's not a better place.
Yeah, it's incredible. I've been over quite a few times, over on the west side, over in Perth, and I was always going over to America, and I wasn't sure what to expect when over to Australia. And I thought it was brilliant. As you say, the lifestyle and the opportunity to get outside is just phenomenal.
It is, and I liken it to the British mentality. The Australian people are like the Brits. You know, every couple of words is a swear word.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's intentional or not. Even on the radios, they swear. So I think it's a little bit of a free range here for people, but it's that mentality that I think attracts me as well, because there's a lot of expats here, which obviously helps the family when you're settling in.
Yeah. And I was looking, you know, in terms of your coaching and managing career, because you've done a lot already, I think. And if you look back, we go back now to your playing career, who influenced you? What coaches influenced you when you were playing?
That's a question I think that gets asked to every young manager. I class myself as a young manager, even though I've managed, you know, fortunate enough to have 240 odd games under my belt. I won't name one manager because I think if you do that, what you're saying is other managers you didn't learn from. I actually learned from every manager. What I won't say is, you know, the information sometimes that you learn from managers is not information that you apply in your own methodology. So from Dave Jones, you know, my first manager, Graham Turner, Graham Taylor, Dave Jones, then you're talking Harry Redknapp, Ronnie Moore at Rotherham, you're talking Mick McCarthy, Nigel Worthington, Peter Grant, when Grant was in charge in Norwich for a couple of months, John Toshak, Mo Johnson, all of these managers had a big influence in my career. But some of them I took major parts from. Hans Backer at New York Red Bulls when he was manager there. Sven-Goran Eriksson's assistant was phenomenal with his organization, his detail, and his tactics. And I used to be like a school kid in his office, writing down every little bit of detail I could, because when you get the opportunity like that to pick a brain of that magnitude, you do. If you want to go into the coaching ranks. So all managers had big influence on me. Mick, for example, would be the character, the commitment, the team spirit, the camaraderie, making players want to play for him. And then Hans, as an example, would have been the tactical detail. You know, John Toshak, I think it's important I mentioned John because the manager of Wales for many years, through a turbulent time with a transition of older players retiring, younger players coming through, the likes of Bale and Ramsey's and Ledley's and these players, Joe Allen's. But the attention to detail he had in his coaching was exceptional. It really was. And I think sometimes John didn't realize that his level of thought process in the training and coaching was not able, us as players were not able to keep up with that. He was thinking 3, 4, 5 steps ahead. And I think people, top players, world-class players, when they go into coaching, sometimes find that an issue in realizing that players can't do what they could do. And that's the biggest challenge in coaching, because staying and doing are two different things.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned John Toshak as well, because when you were speaking, I was thinking he must have been one of the early coaches to go to the continent and coach during that era. There couldn't have been that many when he went over to Spain, was it? There couldn't be that many coaches going over there at that point. Remember when he?
And it was a challenge for him, and I remember asking him at the time, "Why did you do it?" You know, and being a player, talking to a manager and asking, you know, John Toshak, why did you go over to Spain was a big thing, me coming out of my shell. And I went to learn, and the tactical element of the game was such a high level. And that made me interested in European or football abroad, because when you're in Britain, you're in a bubble, and it's great, which is great. But every ex-player usually wants to go into coaching and management. And some get the chance to do it and some don't. I wanted to experience different levels of coaching, different cultures and different environments, for when the opportunity arises, I'm able to go back to the UK with so many strings to my bow.
Did you always then, you know, want to go into the coaching then, Carl? Because I know some players will say they want to go into it. A lot of players will say, "Oh, it's not for me." But I've noticed more players now as well. Like you were saying, I come across quite a few that I'll ask questions like you did on the tactical side. Were you aware that you were kind of stocking up on knowledge, like you said you did at Red Bulls in New York?
Yes, and I did that at 24 years of age when I moved to Portsmouth. Harry Redknapp, fantastic man manager, Jim Smith and Kevin Bond, great assistants. And I remember to this day going into a meeting with Harry, wanting to know why I didn't play. And I said to Harry, why am I not playing? You've signed Tim Sherwood. And Harry was open and honest with it, but he didn't actually tell me anything. He told me how good I was, how much of a professional I was, how much he liked me, how much of a good teammate I was. Very hands-on, very man management type of conversation. And I went out the room knowing no different, not getting an answer, and still being happy. And I thought, wow, the skill set he has in man management is high level. And then from that moment onwards, I started taking notes of his team talks, of training sessions, and making little alterations in, for example, if we've done a 3v2 or a 4v3, I would say, well, I would add wider guys as fullbacks or wingers to cross the ball, so the defenders got to defend 2 phases rather than 1 phase. So that was a little detail I added on to, obviously, an exceptional coach's training session back in 20 odd years ago, back in the 2000s.
So you had your plan or your interest at that. That must have been quite unusual among the group of players that you were a part of then, though. Someone to like you did.
Yeah, and do you know what? If I'm being honest, I'd done it sneakily, and I'd done it in a room where Paul Merson, Limboy Primus, Shaka Hislop, Patrick Berger didn't see me doing it, because I was a little bit not scared, but I thought, well, it's very young to go into that coaching mindset. And, my job was to play. I wanted to be a player. And at 24, having left Wolves, I was a player trying to get Portsmouth back in the Premier League. And it's like your hobby. You have a hobby outside of football. And my hobby outside of football was learning the coaching side. So for the first probably 12 months to 18 months, I actually didn't let anyone know I did it. And then bit by bit, once I started giving information to players on the pitch and then having more adult conversations, I was confident enough to tell Paul Merson I wanted to go into coaching. He still laughed, but Merce laughs about everything, so that was okay as well.
Did you find that when you were looking at coaching in that aspect, did you find that helicopter view of the game, did it help you as a player to play?
Well, I think my best attribute as a player was making players around me better. I thought I was a good player, but nowadays and age, you're talking about there's phenomenal players, there's exceptional players, there's good players, there's top class players, and there's world class players. But I always thought that I made players around me better. So then when I'm talking to coaches and managers and looking at the coaching aspect, I knew how important my type of player was. Not one that always gets the eye of the supporters, but one that is very important to the manager. And I sort of marred that up and I matched it up and I started picking managers' minds and coaches' minds about questions to obviously fill my black books up with, which was important for my store of knowledge, but also to learn. I was a player that was still learning, but also I had in the back of my mind, one day, if you get the chance to coach, you have to be ready, because some people don't get one chance. And as I said, that happened obviously 15 odd years ago. Yeah,
because as you said there, you've got 200 odd kind of matches, you've coached already for a long period of time at a very high level. How did that transition then happen from the player to the coach? When did that happen?
Well, I did I believe it's a normal transition from player to player coach, player coach to assistant coach, and assistant coach to manager. And that was my plan. What I didn't plan for, I wanted 7 years as an assistant manager.
Right.
That was my plan. And unfortunately, when I made the move to Vancouver to assist Martin Rennie, a Scottish manager, that was only there for 2 years. And then they made the change. They decided to move Martin on, and I was leaving the football club. I was following Martin because Martin had brought me in, and I was joining another major league soccer club. And then for one reason or another, the managerial position became available, and I ended up with the job. So I spoke to managers that I respected during the game: Hans Backer, Mick McCarthy, Oshan Roberts, who was a massive influence and still is to me to this day, in relation to coaching the coaches. I think it's important. It's a coach educator, also talented from not just top to bottom, but also bottom to top with pathways and player development, and an assistant, obviously, with the national team before he left to take up the TD role in Morocco. And I asked them, what do you think? And all of them were very, very clear and said, you are ready.
Yeah.
So I was confident enough based upon the knowledge of these guys back in my own ability. And luckily enough, I'm here today.
God. And what was, see, when you took that, you know, the main role there, what was the biggest challenge you found moving from assistant to manager?
Well, one of the things that was levied at me, and I think is levied at most coaches that go into management, and it's a different skill set to be an assistant coach, to being a manager. And every assistant coach probably at some stage thinks about being a manager. But the skill set is totally different. And what I say to young coaches, and I'm a young coach, is because it's a different skill set, it has different characteristics within the role.
Yeah.
You can be everyone's friend as an assistant. You can shout, but you can make up. You don't have to make big decisions. You don't have to release players. You don't have to tell them they're not playing. You don't have to deal with the ownership, the board, all of these scenarios. Being a manager, you do need to do that. So you have to be the bad guy. And one of the things everyone said was, Robbo's a great guy. They love me being a coach, you know, but is he too nice to be a manager? Yeah. All right. Well, then you go back to what you know and what your behaviors are as a player. Yeah. And I was a really, really nice man, a nice person off the field. But when I went on the field, I was horrible and I wanted to win. Yeah. So that was my managerial insight of, listen, I'm a good coach. Everyone likes me, but I'm a manager. I want to win, you know, make no doubt. And one of the first decisions I made was obviously sending Kenny Miller back to Glasgow Rangers. So it's not an easy decision. It was a great decision for Kenny because he went back to his boyhood club. We know that. But it was, we still laugh and joke at it today.
So when you look at your time and Vancouver there, what was, it's a big question, what was your big learnings you took from that period? Because you were there for a long time, really, in terms of managerial stints nowadays. That was a long time you were there, was it? 5 years or 5 seasons?
I was there, yeah. I was there for nearly 5 years. I was there for 4.5 years. And what was the biggest thing I learned from that period? I enjoyed my time there. I worked with some very good people. Was make sure you don't stay at a club too long. Yeah. All right. That was the biggest aspect I took out of that. And I didn't really have that idea until I took a year out of football. And I took a year out of football for the mental side of it. I wanted to spend more time with my family because my work days were 7 a.m. till 6 p.m. for 4.5 years. And in the off season, I would scout, because when you sign a player, it's on you, the manager, the coach. So you need to, I wanted to watch him. I wanted to get eyes on him, and I had to make the decision, because when you're dealing in certain amounts of money, the buck stops with you as a manager. And I took the accountability for it. So I enjoyed my time there, but at some stage later on, I did think, don't stay at a club too long, not just for yourself, but also for them, because sometimes change is good, you know, and I know people don't like change. A different voice is good. You know, some people like it and some people don't, but just for the energy of yourself, I think it's very important. And you learning aspect as a manager, it's important that you actually go into a different environment, different set of players, and be uncomfortable. You know, part of being a coach is being uncomfortable.
And did you find in that period your coaching and management almost kind of philosophy developed over that period? Did you get clearer on that, Carl, over that 5 years?
I did. Yeah, I did. It was really interesting, because when you're in it, you get immersed in it, and you're making decisions every day, and then you're making decisions for the weekend based upon the results. Then that alters. You know, academy football is really clear. You know, on a Monday to Friday for 3 months what you're doing, what you're working on, right? And the curriculum is set. First team football sometimes is based upon results, and you try not to go away from how you want to play, your methodology, and how you see the game, your phases, your concepts, your fundamentals, your principles. But when you lose 4-0 on a weekend, you can't actually work on attacking play. You have to work on defending play, and you have to adapt. The adaptability for a coach is very important. So, you know, how do I know that? Well, you learn that. You know, people can tell you what to do, but until you come, a boxer is a fighter. Any person can fight until they get punched in the nose and their eyes water. And when you're in football management, you lose 4-0 or you lose to a last minute goal. You have to make adjustments in that week's training to make sure that doesn't happen again, or vice versa. If you don't deal with the situation and problem, you brush it under the carpet, you can guarantee it will happen again. It might be 2, 3, it might be 4 weeks, but it will happen again. So address the situation, deal with it, and obviously continue to teach players.
Yeah. And how did you find, because I think in first team level, that's, and hearing your speaking as well, there's almost a tension, isn't it, between your long-term aspirations and plans, and then when you, as you say, when you go into the first team, you're not thinking even a month ahead. Sometimes you're thinking Saturday to Wednesday, isn't it? Did you find that a tension then?
Yes, but you know how I break the year down. Say year. Whenever you go into a project, and Vancouver was a project for me, Newcastle was a project, and now obviously Western Sydney is a project. Projects change, and when you talk about change, which people don't like, you have to change it for the positive and for the good reason. So I always break it down into months, three monthly periods, 3 months, 6 months transfer window opens, 9 months, 12-month transfer window opens. Do that for a piss, and that's part of my presentation to when I go in and apply for a job. And when I say that changes every 6 months, and it's reviewed every 6 months. You know, people talk about coaching, but pro license courses are for management. You know, and it's important you manage upwards as well as downwards, and as well as your staff, and having a plan, but being adaptable to that plan and being open to it, and realizing that it's not quite worked, or you made a mistake, or due to circumstances you need to adjust and be adaptable to it, I think is part of being a good coach and a good manager. Yeah,
I would agree totally, Carl. You know, when you're seeing that ability to go up the way, sideways, you know, work the way down, where you're, you know, it's such the complexity of a football team nowadays, and everything around it is definitely increasing. Would you say the complexity?
It is. Yeah, it is. I never go away from my core values, and my core values are what my mother and late father instilled in me: is get to know the person. Once you know the person, you can affect the player. Once then you've got into the player's mind, you've got to coach the player. Right. And those are principles that I stick to in relation to getting to know the person. And if you do that on an individual basis, you can then do it on a collective and a unit, and you can put the units into 3 different categories, and then you can build a team. Once you build a team, you have to build a squad. Once you build a squad, you have to build a club. So it gets broken down to that level of detail by each person, whether it's a player or a staff member.
And I think that's one of the things that struck me in your interview in Sydney, was the focus. You said that part of your role was having a pathway for the young players coming through to the first team. Do you see that as a real important part of your job as a first team manager? Because I know some managers don't actually; they just focus on the results on the Saturday.
Well, what I'd say to you, and it's funny because I smile every time, and there's a lot of managerial changes that happen every week all over the world. Usually managers have this preconceived idea of how they're going to play and what they're going to do. And they will all say, oh, we're going to play open, expansive, attractive attacking football, and we're going to play all the young kids. All right. What I said in my press conference, I stick to. Saying and doing are 2 different things. Saying it and then doing it are two, as I said, different things. How you do that is what you are as a person. So if I'm going to say to a player this, I've got to back it up. If I'm going to commit this example to a player, I have to do it. So what I say with pathways with young players is there's a number of things that go into this. You have to create pathways for your talented young players. How you do that makes planning, organization, structures very, very important. When you set that up, you have an idea which is reviewed every 2 to 3 months in relation to the academy of, is there a senior player in his pathway? Okay, so you say yes. When is this kid player going to be ready to play or affect the first team? In 2 years. Okay, in that 2-year period, is there another player that's ahead of him that's older that is blocking his pathway? If the case is yes, and you've identified this young player as a very talented player within your system, unfortunately, you have to make a decision and move that player for the benefit, not just of the talented young player, but for the benefit of the other player. Once you do that, then you get to the gap between, which is the hardest gap in football, of youth football or
Yeah.
reserve team football and senior football.
Yeah.
The way I try and work, I don't want two senior players in one position. And I don't want two senior players in one position for a reason. Because if you've got two 32-year-olds who are both centre forwards, and you only play one centre forward, and one of them plays, the likelihood is the young player is not a young player that you have in your system is not going to get minutes or opportunities to play, because one of your senior players will play and one will come off the bench. So I try and remove that obstacle and try and get a player probably in the range of 28 to 24. And then I've got my young player of 20 to 16. And if you do that, then when one of the players becomes injured, the next player steps up and the young player gets an opportunity. So you have to create pathways, but it's easy saying it.
Yeah,
you have to put structures in place to do it. And everyone within the football club needs to commit to it and be open and honest with it, and then actually do it.
Yeah, and as you said there, and it's all very well saying it, but then doing it. And of course, if you see it and then the pathway doesn't happen for the players, that's almost the worst thing possible, isn't it?
Well, you lose the player. That's the first thing I'll say, is you can create a pathway, but then as a manager, when you are in a bad run of results, you think about your job, and you go away from what your core principles are, and you probably play the safer option rather than the right option. And that's what I've learned over a period of time, is have no regrets, make decisions based upon who you are, the values you have. And by the way, the first probably thought you have. So if your thought is to play the young kid, play the young kid. Because if you don't do that, whether the inevitable is going to happen with results and you lose your job, the likelihood is you're probably going to lose your job at some stage anyway, and you will regret not giving that kid the opportunity to play.
Yeah, and I like what you said there about your first. It's like a player, isn't it? It's trusting your instinct as a manager, isn't it, to play him and going and not overthinking.
Yeah. Usually the first pass you see as a player is the right pass. And players that don't pass that ball will look away and look for the option which is not on, and will go back to that first pass. The coach, make your decision, stick to it, and obviously instill the player with confidence when he's going to perform for you.
If you could, because you're still, in your career, Carl, you're still close enough to play and to, I'm sure, have a strong feeling for what it's like as a player. When you look at the game now, do you think the game has changed a lot since you've stopped playing, or is it still relatively the same?
No, I think it's changed. I think it's become very more physical. I think it's become more, nowadays you're talking about the physical output of players, the demands on players, the amount of games on players. And playing in the Championship, you play Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Wednesday. Playing in the Premier League now and again with the cup competitions, it's every 3 games in a week. But the physical demands, the travel that the players have to put into it, there's no wonder there's so many injuries during this period, which is why clubs try to build squads to allow the flexibility of the players to have a rest when they have. So has it changed? Yes. Has the level got higher? Yes. Has it quickened? Yes. Has it become more attractive to watch? Yes. Are there more characters in the game? Probably not. You talk about the older school players, which people like to talk about now. When you've got a little bit of character about you, you get remembered for the right reasons. Gazzers, the Mercies, people like that are great. They're talked about now because they're world-class players and they're good people. Yes, they've made probably mistakes along the way, as has every person. But that's the level of what people think of them players. But it's certainly changed. And as a coach, you have to be adaptable to that. If I think that I can be a coach today based upon when I played in 2008, I'm mistaken. I'll fail.
Do you think as well that, certainly my experience in the coach education at clubs, there's a lot more game intelligence or tactics taught to players at an earlier age now? Do you think that's influenced how players play?
Yes, and I think it needs to be. When you spend time with the academy and the younger age groups, I actually think that players should go into systems the earliest possible age they can, 9s and 10s, I think, because the technical side is very important, and the basics of football, the checking the shoulders, the turning, all of these things, which don't get taught to some players until they're 15, 16. It's too late. So you look at that, the sooner they can get into a program, the better. The earlier they get in, the more development they have in the early stages, because people grow at different stages and are different sizes, because that's the way of the world. And some get fast tracked and some push through quicker than others. What's important is all of the fundamentals for players, the basic concepts for players, are taught at such an early age that it becomes ingrained in them. And if it becomes ingrained in them, you will see more players developing more quickly, because they know what it's like and how it's like to play the game at a high level. What changes is the size of the opposition that you're playing against, the physical nature, and then you get to a stage where you're playing against ex-senior professionals who want to win, who need to win because of win bonuses and appearance bonuses. So then that's the mental side of it. The mentality has to be right as well, which, how do you teach mentality? That's a real big question, especially in academy football, and that's the $1 million question that clubs are trying to figure out now.
Yeah, I would agree totally. So I know, Carl, because as you said, your core values very much human, based on the person in front of you. How do you go about as a manager and coach finding the time to get to know everyone? Because I know if I'll say that to some people, they'll say, "Oh, I don't have the time to do that." How do you find the time to get to know people?
Well, first of all, you have to commit to it. And I generally believe, as a coach, a manager, you have to have an insight of how you want to play, be clear with the way you want to play, and then imply all your principles and foundations and things like that onto the players, individually and collectively and as a team. But you can't not talk to players. The way society is at the moment, if you don't talk to a player knows and feels uncomfortable and feels low on confidence. He then will tell another player. Suddenly 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 5, and they feel like they're not wanted. So I make sure that I speak to every single player. What I do is I give individual players clear information of where they're at, what I expect from them, what I require. If they're in the team, what they need to stay in the team. If they're out the team, what they need to do to get in the team. If they're not involved at all and they're injured, what mindset I want them to have for when they come back into training, because the intensity levels in training need to be of a requirement. And if they're not in that, they will spend extra time on the sidelines to get into that. So everything is clear. There's no gray area, and everyone knows where they're at. So that's what I stick to. And if it means I have to be in till 5, 6 o'clock in the evening to make sure I speak to these players, and at certain times, I might spend time with certain players on the field. I might spend time with players in the physio room, in the gym, having lunch. I'll sit down with a couple of players and speak to them on a personal level and ask them certain questions, which I probably can't do on the training field, because when we're on the training field, we're working. So I have to pick and choose my right time. I keep a note of the people I have spoke to in the book, so I don't miss anyone, because if you miss one, that's one piece of the jigsaw, which you're trying to make sure that you can fulfill. And I don't do that.
Yeah, brilliant. It sounds pretty comprehensive as well. And it's all part of it. It's just the core, isn't it? It's getting to know people and speaking to the person in front of you other than just the player. It's just core to getting the best out of everyone as well, isn't it?
I think that's in life, in any workplace, and the humility, the values that each individual has. Treat people as you want to be treated is a firm thought of mine. And telling the truth. If I'm asking my players to commit to what I'm wanting them to do, I can't lie to them. I can't deceive them. So you don't. So you tell them the truth. They might not like it. They might not agree with it. That is life, and that you have to accept that. And if that's the case, then you ask the communication from them. If I'm going to leave a player out of the team, I'll explain why. Usually players won't say a word because they're disappointed, but I follow up that. I said, how do you feel? What do you think you can do better? Do you know what you need to do to get into my team? So that's how you build a relationship, even when you're probably going to leave a player out. And again, it's based upon my experience with Harry Redknapp back in 2004. So you always go to what you know, and what you know works. So those are the experiences that you tend to rely on.
Yeah, sounds great. So if you're looking forward for yourself, Carl, I know you're just at the beginning of the project in Sydney. When you look forward for your own managing career, have you any big goals you would like to achieve? You know, would you like to come back to the UK eventually?
Yes, I would, and I've said that openly, even from when I took my first job. The plan was to one day go back to the UK. The answer that I can't give, and I don't give to anyone, is I don't know when. And if that happens, because at the end of the day, the club needs to want the manager needs to want to go to the club, and then you obviously need to work it out. So I've made it very clear that one day I want to go manage in England. But when I do go and manage in England, I want to be prepared. I want to be fully committed to it, because as you know, with England, sometimes the rope is a little bit shorter, and you don't get as much shelf life as probably what you do in other countries. So you have to be ready, you have to be clear with what you want, and you have to go into a project which I think can actually be successful as well. And sometimes it's easy to jump at any job, even though the job isn't quite right, because yes, you have confidence in yourself, but sometimes if you get one job and it doesn't work out, you're very lucky if you get a second job. If you get a second job and it doesn't work out, likelihood is you're not getting a third job. So I want to be clear with what I want. I want to experience different tactics, different cultures, and when I say experience, have over 300 plus games. For when I come back, I'm prepared, I'm ready, and then it's down to me, and it's down to my ability then. But I'm still learning at the moment. I'm still enjoying learning, and I still probably want to go to one or two more different countries before I end up back in the UK.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I think that openness to learning whatever we do is key now, isn't it? It's just to be open and continue to take things on as we move forward.
It is. British coaches, I think, like the idea of managing abroad, but don't actually make the decision to go and manage abroad. And I've got so much respect for any British coach that goes abroad because they want to go abroad. And sometimes they have to because the jobs are not there. But what I say to any coach is it's an amazing experience, which you have to embrace, you have to enjoy, you have to commit to, because there's no point going to commit to it and 3 months later deciding you want to come back because it didn't suit you or your family. But, there's so many jobs out there, but you have to be fully committed to it, not just in football, but in life and in work. Commit to it, be the best you can every single day. And then when that decision is made, whether it's your decision or the club's decision to leave, there's no regrets. And that's the way I live it.
Brilliant. And I think that's a great couple of kind of statements to end on, is be committed and be the best you can every day. So thanks very much for taking the time to speak to us today, Carl, and I'll speak to you soon. Okay. Cheers.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye. Bye.